Brian. I'll be your host for this series of videos. And what we're all about here at OBS is maintenance and modifications that I've made to a Woodmizer sawmill. Now, I will say that a lot of these modifications will work on other brands of sawmills, other models of the Woodmizer. It's just up to you to take a look at it and see if it's something that would interest you to put on your sawmill. Or if you're considering buying a sawmill, I'll be showing my setup and things to keep in mind when you're choosing a sawmill. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos for several years before and after I bought my sawmill, and you learn a lot from them. There's some people that are really intelligent in the way that they're describing their modifications and what they're doing at their sawmill. I guess I should say, to start off with, that Woodmizer in no way supports this channel. I am just strictly a satisfied customer of Woodmizer. They don't condone anything that I've done, and it's just my ideas that I have put towards making my sawmill better, in hopes that you'll find an advantage to some of the things that I've done and consider using for your sawmill. I myself have a background in equipment modification. It's automated equipment. I've done heavy mechanical fabrication, electrical work, and some of that naturally came into sawmilling when I bought my sawmill a few years back. So in running the sawmill, I see little things that I think would make it better and easier. Since I am set up as a one-man operation, it's definitely helped me. And these modifications that I've done, I don't hack into the machine. I try and do these modifications to complement the machine. And you'll see that as we get to looking through all these different sections of what I've done. So I thought I would start by showing you around the outside of the mill, and then I'll work my way inside and show you my setup, and then I'll take each modification, speak briefly about it, and at some point later on I'll do an independent video of each modification. That way I can take my time and explain things. But I will say that I'll need help from viewers like yourself. Maybe leave a suggestion or a comment as to what you might like to see next in the next video. Now, I have 4 or 5 things that have really changed my life in sawmilling. Made it easier for me to run the machine, up my production, just several different things that I think a lot of people might be interested in. So if you see something that you'd like to see a video next of, just leave a comment in the description, and I'll be going over those, and that'll let me know what I need to work on next. Because to be honest, I'm so busy at the sawmill and other things, I don't know how long it'll take to get the next video out. But I will be working on it as time goes on. So stick around with us and enjoy the video. Now, something I wanted to say that people might consider is in setting up the yard. Here comes the Brutus, the sawmill dog. But in setting your logs up, I sort things out according to size and species. But I also set them up on rails. You see these larger pines, I've got them set up on old dead logs that I've had. But I've got them spaced out. Obviously you can see that I can get my skid steer through the center, but these center logs are 8 feet apart. Then the other logs are 4 feet away. So that's 16 feet between the outside logs. So I can just look at these logs and tell what the lengths are. That comes in handy when you're sorting out for a particular job to cut things. And I also stack these logs so that when I grab one and take it to the mill, it's already turned correctly for me. I put the smaller diameter towards the operator side. That way I can see with the laser where to set the saw blade for cutting the most material I can get out of it. And also, since I draw the flitches back, it leaves a little more material at the tail end of the machine so that the drawback guide or plate has a little bit more to grab onto. I wanted to show the outside of my sawmill so that you might get ideas. This has really worked out good for me. I've got an in-feed area where I bring logs in. I think it's 23 feet open at one side. I left that open to get logs in. But I've got it set up so that I can bring my skid steer in from the end door or the front door. Obviously feed logs in here. And if I slide this sled out, I can bring the skid steer in and slide slabs off of the log that I'm cutting them off of. Now I kept the other 3 feet open on that far wall that you see to rake sawdust out. And that's what I did several years ago until I put the dust collection in. It worked out good, but now I'm thinking about putting a curtain up over this opening because the wind blows sawdust back in. It's so fine when I'm operating. I've got the sawdust coming out up high. See the port up there. So it blows it out up high and scatters kind of in the wind, but most of it falls in this area that I'm standing in. And you know, I just keep it pulled down. We put some in the goat pen, chicken pen, just wherever we can put it. And I have other people too that come and get some from time to time. But you can see I've put a gutter in collecting rainwater for the water tank on the sawmill. That works real good. I've got a water spigot, but it's probably 50 yards away, so I guess you can say I'm a little bit lazy. And I had the tote bin, so I just went ahead and built this frame out of some of the legs that were left on this outfeed conveyor that I put together. A friend of mine gave me the diesel tank. I bought a pump, put it on there, and that really saves the back from just going and getting 5-gallon containers of diesel fuel. That's worked out good. But I just wanted to show you my setup. Maybe people can get an idea from it. And if you've got suggestions, I welcome them. So just leave a suggestion or in the comment section, because I don't know it all. I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. So just feel free to leave a comment if you see anything that might improve what I've done. But logs will come in through this opening that I've left. It's 23 feet long, I think it is. This building is 25 by 50. When I bought the property, it had a 25 by 25 pole barn here. I added 25 feet and closed it in. And it's important, like if you go out on a job site and cut for a customer and then bring the mill back, because of my setup, I have the outfeed conveyor at the other end. All my flitches feed out, hit that belted conveyor, then they go out the door and get on the other gravity conveyor, and it's hydraulically controlled. It dumps the flitches into a pile. And we'll look at that in just a minute. But by having a chock in place, I can bring the sawmill back. I think you can see it under there. I've got a 1/2-inch plate bolted to a 4x6 that is pinned down. Move around, see if you can see it. That's the back of the 4x6. So now I can bring the sawmill in and put it back in the exact spot that it was in. And all of these outriggers are sitting on boards that are pinned to the ground. See a little bit of the board there, but all of these outriggers have a specific plate that they sit on. So what I do is my flitch, the first cut coming off the log, I draw it back and it goes on to the belted conveyor, which is turning 20 feet per minute faster than the sawmill comes back. The sawmill is moving back at 200 feet per minute is what I'd figured, And I've got this belted conveyor running at 220, so it's about 10% faster. That way when the flitches hit it, they don't slow down. This rough top belt just takes them right on out the door. You can see I've got my control panel here right beside the operator seat when I draw all the way back. You can see I left a control for the infeed, but like I said, I decided not to go that route and just go with this simple sled. But when the flitches are all the way out on the other conveyor, I simply push the eject button and it throws the flitches into a pile on my forks. And then at the end of the day, well, actually, when I cut 20 or 30 logs in a day, I have to empty out these flitches at least once during the day because they pile up so quick. But you can see how I've got my forks just sitting there at an angle. This conveyor tilts up to 30 degrees. Those flitches just slide off onto the forks, so I don't have to handle any individual pieces. That's flitches or the finished lumber. This is what the bundles look like coming off the sawmill. I bring them straight out in these stacks and place them on risers. Hey, Bruce. So that they're ready to be loaded on the customer's trailer or truck when they come pick them up. I got Brutus, the sawmill dog, here with me. Hey, buddy, say hey to everybody. He's in charge of the sawdust pipe. Nothing's gonna bother his sawdust as long as he's around. I thought I would start with my ride-along seat attachment that I've made. This has come in very handy for what I do. As I mentioned, I'm a one-man operation, and I like being right up front with the action, seeing where the saw blade clears the tree, and seeing if I'm going to hit anything with the sawmill, like limbs or whatever. But this sawmill actually came with wireless remote, and it came in handy, especially out working off-site. But I found that I like walking along beside the machine, and after a while I got to where I wanted to ride, so I saw that Woodmizer had these attachments, but in their attachments you lose a certain amount of machine capacity. You can see here how it's hooked up, just a trailer hitch pin. So I made a lower bracket, put the hitch receiver in, and made the framework itself where you just pull the pin and the whole attachment comes off. And the seat itself lifts off so that you're ready to go. You see I've got a little phone accessory table there and a place to set your coffee cup, whatever. But this has worked out real good, and it was not real expensive to build. It's really worked out good for me. I am going to do a separate video on it by itself at some point, and I'll go more into detail. So let's move along to some of the other items. And as I say, you know, having a one-man operation, there are certain things that I have done, such as put the mirror in up there so I can see how I draw the flitches back. And we'll get into that a little bit later when I show you my operation as it's going. Alright, so we got that. And I did an extension to the drawback frame here. The original from Woodmizer was only 6 inches long. I think that's about right, but I added 6 inches, I think, to this one, and that way it catches the flitch a little bit better on a larger diameter tree. It was just barely catching with the original part. So I've made this, and you can see where I added keyway underneath to bite into the end of the tree, and it helps hold it in place. When I pull the large flitches back, they really slam down on that support there. And I've made an extra leg that hinges up. You can see it down below. Oh, going the wrong way. See it down below there. So when you're going off-site, whatever, it just hinges up and straps to that leg underneath, the cross member. And I also added little brackets under this because this section was really taking a beating when some of the larger flitches came off and hit. So I made those little brackets to go under there to help relieve some of that. Up here on the sawmill, you notice there's a grease fitting on the back of the motor. Right there, it's the rear main bearing. Very important that it be greased and serviced regularly. Well, the way the sawmill comes, it does not have that extension. I've added an 1 5/8" extension to get it up where I can reach it. Then I also cut a notch in this cover because to grease the fitting, you'd have to take the cover off just to get to the original fitting. But I will mention that you have to cut a long cutout here because when the motor engages up, the grease fitting winds up over close to this edge. So you don't want it to hit on this, maybe bend the stem. But this is very important. I watched one video of a gentleman only had, I think, 500 hours on his machine and noticed a vibration, and it turned out to be this bearing because he didn't know that it was there to be greased. Here at the drive belt behind the covering, this is under the water tank. I have a LT50, and different models are configured differently, but they all have this main bearing for the lift of the saw head. It's right at the end of the output shaft for the gear reducer. You can see the bearing just to the left of the chain there, kind of covered with sawdust, but then you see the extension that I put on there. It's 2 1 5/8" Zerk fitting extensions screwed together. Here you can see a little bit better the hole that I drilled, and then you can see the grease fitting inside. So you don't have to take the cover off to access that grease fitting. Get the light on it. There it is. Hopefully you can see that. It's really important to keep this bearing, and it's even more important for the main bearing, is it gets a lot of wear. This gets a fair amount of wear because you go up and down in the course of a day a lot. So on this machine, when I bought it, it was wired for a laser, but the laser assembly was not attached to the machine. It did not come with it. So I bought the switch, the laser brackets from Woodmizer, and purchased my own laser. And what Woodmizer offers on the LT series is a 15 milliwatt red laser. They do offer a green for their WM series, which is the industrial sawmills, and it is 30 milliwatt, I believe. Well, what I did is bought a 100 milliwatt green laser, and it really illuminates. You can see it even in the daylight. I'll switch it on here. You can see that mirror I've got set up at the back. I just kicked it on, and even though sunlight's coming through, I hope you can see it on the video, but I can see it plain as day here. And we'll talk about that mirror in just a second and what it's for. But because the sawmill is set up 12 volt, the lasers, they'll operate on 12 volts, but the alternator is putting out 14.8 at times when it's at high rev. I came in and put a transformer, a step-down transformer here. When I installed the laser, it goes from 12 volts down to 5 volts. And so that's a good range for the laser. If you give it too much voltage, they'll overheat and the light will become dim. And it eventually wears the laser itself out. But as I said, I bought the brackets from Woodmizer because it's already set up, so it just bolts on, and I got my laser and installed it with the higher wattage, and it really makes a difference. But you have to be careful with the laser. Obviously, you don't want to look at the light, and it's only on 8 or 10 seconds at a time when I use it. And I get several uses out of the laser. Lasers have had a bad rap because you just can't see them very well in the daylight. But if you get a green one, it's more, the eye is more receptive to that color, is what they say. and it just shows up better. But what I do, like I mentioned, I've got the mirror there at the other end. I set the pith of the logs with the laser. That's the first thing that I do. And I can see the butt end of the log through the mirror. At first you can see the green light. I think now I've gotten closer with the camera anyway. I want to make sure you can see it, even with the daylight behind it. To begin with, I was putting a small reflector tab on the butt end of the log, and it just turns on like a flashlight in that mirror when you hit it with the laser. And so at that point, I would bring the sawmill down so that it's even with the center of the tree on that end, and then adjust the lead edge of the log on the front here to compensate the taper in the log. And it's really increased production. I mean, it's only like it's less than 10 seconds to set the pith. Then you raise the saw blade up to make your first cut, and you're just ready to go. The laser obviously shines across the front edge of the log in front of you, so you know exactly where the blade's going to hit. It's time. Here is a modification that really helped on production time, and that is speeding up the saw head going up and down. When I bought the mill, I noticed that the belt was slipping going up, and I checked to see how to adjust the tension, but there was no way to adjust the tension. They had just a simple spring attached to the saw head here, pulling back, so there was really no way to adjust the tension. So I made this bracket. It had a 8-pound spring on it. I put a 15-pound and this screw eye so that I can tension it, and I've got really good tension on the belt now. But while I was at it, I also reduced this pulley size by 20%. That increased the speed by 20%. And this is the brake that activates when power is taken away from the motor, so it engages under no power. When power hits the motor, this releases. So all this still works good, but I'm going 20% faster because I changed this pulley and belt. Now I will say this is a very dangerous modification. It's a way that you could get hurt, serious damage to the machine. Now I'm going to do a separate video on this, and I really suggest, if you're considering this, wait until that video comes out so you'll see exactly what needs to be done to be safe. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, obviously I use a skid steer for my operation here, and I know that everybody's different. I've had John Deere tractors, Kubotas, had an old Farmall Super A at one time. I loved that tractor. But I decided to go with a skid steer this time, and I'm really glad that I did. It's so much more power, especially in mud, it being a track loader. It really does a good job for what I do. But I wanted to talk about this attachment. This is actually a stump grapple. It's for digging up stumps, knocking trees over. It's real handy in handling the logs. I've made this other attachment here that hinges up. It's got pins where I can hold it up or down. But when I'm handling logs, this V cuts into the log. There's another V at the back, so I can reach out and grab the end of a log, the butt end of the log, and pick the whole log up, and it's sticking out from this bucket. This bucket is, I think, 13.5 inches wide, so it makes it real easy to pick logs off the pile from the end. You see my pile of pine trees outside, I can pick whatever size I want right out of the bottom of the pile or wherever and just pull it out. And it's real handy for doing things like that. But when I accumulate finished lumber on the sawmill, this attachment swings down and clamps into place with those pins, but this hits on the top of the finished lumber instead of these points or these edges here so I don't harm the finished wood. And I'll show that in another video when I'm running, but this is a very good attachment for handling logs and finished lumber. It just works really good. I can pick up a whole stack of finished lumber 12 inches wide. I put a strap around it on farther out towards the end, but I pick the whole bundle up and just move it out of the building and lay it in a stack ready to load on a customer's truck or trailer. There's old Brutus out there guarding the sawdust pile. I told you. Nothing's gonna bother his sawdust as long as he's around. Where you going, buddy? Where you going? Where you going? Where do you think you're going? You guarding your sawdust? You keeping squirrels out of sawdust? Hey, boy, you doing that? Head up, boy. Oh, you about to push me over. You about to push me over, buddy. You about to push your daddy over. Head up, buddy. Go get a stick. Go get a stick. Go get a stick. Go get it. Somebody's in the sawdust. There you go. There you go. Go get him. Get him, boy. Head up, boy. Sawdust okay? Head up, boy. You want a sawmill? You want to help Daddy a little bit? That's okay. You can help sawdust. I think he's got other things in mind. He's going to go over there and lay down, probably. Yep. Well, if you've made it this far, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it. I know Brutus enjoyed being a part of it. And we have several more coming, so if you like what we've done, maybe hit the like button, subscribe if you like. Definitely hit the notification bell, because I don't know when our next videos will be coming out. And as I said at the beginning, also consider leaving a comment or suggestion as to what modification you'd like to see the next video of. That'll help me decide what I need to do first. So until then, take care, be safe.